But I do think one of the reasons why we're getting children who are allegedly displaying more autistic symptoms is because of that societal dysregulation, and because it's a bit like the best analogy I used on a podcast ages ago with a guy who had ADHD was, if imagine everyone's stood in a swimming pool and some people are 0.6 meters tall and some people are 2 meters tall, and their height is how mentally and emotionally stable they are within themselves. I guess as a collective, as an entity that spans across the family and society. So if you grow up in a certain area, stable family, good, you're not very high in trait neuroticism, which is basically entirely biologically determined, you're going to be like 2 meters tall and you're going to be okay. And then someone who's complete opposite, impoverished, potential ethnic minority, if you want to go down that route, etc., learning disabilities, they're like 0.6. And the amount of water is societal complexity. And what happens is when you add more complexity, which in another word, is freedom and opportunity. As we just said, they're basically the same thing. That person who's in 0.6 is going to really struggle, and they're going to be like that, trying to get air. And the person who's 2 meters is going to be like, oh, okay, get a bit higher now, but I'm still fine. And then, people metaphorically drown. And that's why I think that's one of the biggest problems we face as society, is that those people get left behind. And those people are everyone. They're not just people that they don't look a certain way. They're everyone. You could have grown up. I don't like identity politics, but I understand how they can be relevant. You know what I mean by identity politics, don't you?
Give me a definition.
So it's the idea of, so I'm a white, heterosexual male, therefore middle class, not really middle class, but not working class male. Therefore, my life is easy because I belong to the privileged group of society. I don't agree with that, because actually, if you picked 10 random people, 100 random people, I'd probably be in the top 95 of difficulties in aspects of life. But I have had, obviously, those inherent privileges, even though they're actually a bit of a disadvantage nowadays, I think, in some circumstances, for various reasons. But I think some of the biggest privileges are the ones that we don't talk about. So I think my biggest privilege was that I had 2 loving parents growing up. And no one ever says that. That's not listed as the...
You're so right.
Privilege.
Yeah, 100%.
The demographics. And then you can get really, really down to real minutiae details. That identity politics is that. And then the sort of associated term is intersectionality, which is basically what I was just explaining.
Familiar. Yeah.
The idea that you can't just look at someone who's black. You have to look at the fact that they're black and a woman, and that they're da-da-da-da-da-da. So you create like a web of complexity. And eventually, I think if you push intersectionality to its maximum, it just collapses on itself, and it realizes you have to look at the person as an individual.
Oh my God, you're so right. You know what? Everything you're saying there I stand by it 100%. One of my favorite phrases is, when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism.
Yeah.
You know, someone who's neurotypical pictures someone with autism and thinks of a 3-year-old who absolutely loves trains, something typical.
Or Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, something like that.
It's Sheldon from The Big Bang Theory, exactly. Yes, spot on.
Yeah.
They don't think of a woman who's 26 and has a social life and a job and a career, and because that's not what it looks like, right? That's not what they think of. But it's the person. You have to see the person as a person. Everything you spoke about before, actually, really valid point. About sort of talking about the fact you're white, heterosexual, your upbringing, middle class, that sort of thing. If someone looked at my life, they would have assumed the same. You know, I grew up in a middle class household. We weren't poor. You know, I'm very fortunate in that respect. Obviously, I'm white. Grew up in a fairly wealthy area. Went to a good school. You would think, oh, what could possibly be wrong? But you don't know me. You just know those characteristics. So it's seeing, the person as a person and not a statistic and not a factor or a characteristic, I think. But yeah. You're definitely right with what you're saying.
It's not, what is it? It's not limiting someone to, because you have to make a judgment call of what aspect of someone's identity you're going to prioritize to put at the top of the hierarchy. And that is, and we've, as a society, we've made like 5 main judgment calls, and they're the big demographics, but there's actually thousands of them.
100%.
So, yeah, right. Back to what are we, 35 minutes in? We're good for time, aren't we?
Sure.
Yeah.
No, all good.
Do you mean by lack of research into women's health?
Oh, yeah, good question. Good question. So my diagnosis for my seizures is non-epileptic attack disorder, which is caused by my complex PTSD. But my NEAD, which I shorten it to because I'm not going to say it every single time, is what's called catamenial. So it's caused by fluctuations in my hormones at certain times in my cycle. And there is so little research into that. I've had to be referred to a specialist clinic in London, which is one of the only ones in the country that is likely to be able to help me, because no one will touch me. It falls out of all of the specialist remit, essentially. So a gynecologist, they won't advise me on it because it's epilepsy. So they won't give me advice on what's the best thing to do. A neurologist won't advise me on it because it's in regards to hormones, and they can only advise on anticonvulsant medication. They can't advise me on hormonal medication. Endocrinologist won't advise on it either because it's again related to seizures. So there isn't really anyone. I was thinking, why is this? Like, what is happening here? And there's a few reasons behind it. One reason is the fact that it's fairly rare. But if you look at other types of epilepsy that are also very rare, there's something called Lennox-Gastaut syndrome, I believe. Very rare type of epilepsy as well, but so much more research, like heavily much more research. It's one of the only conditions actually you can be prescribed medicinal cannabis for. So they're actually making fairly big leaps in treating that condition, even though it's very, very rare. So I started looking into it and I thought, why on earth is this not being studied? I mean, it's ruined my life, obviously. It's a nightmare for me to sort of do anything. But why is that lack of research there? And it comes down to plain and simple historical bias when it comes to women's health. And you'll see it in lots of different other areas as well. And a prime example of this is contraceptives. For women, there are, I don't even know how many contraceptives. Plenty of different types of pills. You've got injections, you've got implants, you've got coils, you've got all sorts of different things. Male contraceptives, condoms. There's no injection. There's no anything that changes the structure of a man's biology in any way. And yet for women, there's loads. And for the reason behind that, I honestly think is because it benefits men for women to be the one whose body is suffering from needing that. And I don't say that lightly because I'm aware that that's a big statement, but we see it in so many areas of not just medicine. There's lots of different things as well. That the medicine is heavily such a big thing. And I think it's incredible that even now, we're in 2025 now, this is still not being studied. This is not being researched. It's clear that hormones have an impact on seizure activity, and in a lot of women as well, even women who don't have the formal diagnosis, because proestrogen and estrogen work differently, and estrogen is a convulsant and proestrogen is an anticonvulsant. So of course, when you've got more estrogen, you're more likely to have a seizure. Yet there isn't really research into it, and there isn't really even medical guidance to advise clinicians on how to support women with this. And yeah, more absolutely needs to be done, to be honest.
Yeah. I mean, the birth control pill in itself is a bit of a mess. I think the whole
100%.
thing was probably pushed through a little bit too soon. I think, yeah, interesting idea with it's a textbook feminist viewpoint to.
You're right. Do you know what? I honestly understand what they're saying there. I try not to be that sort of, but there's evidence to support it.
Yeah. The only thing I would say is men's hormones don't fluctuate. So do they?
Yeah, they do. This is, again, I mean, lack of research into men's hormonal cycles because men don't want to mess around with them. But men's hormones fluctuate on a 24-hour cycle. Women's fluctuate on a monthly cycle. Men's fluctuate on a 24-hour cycle.
24-hour cycle, yeah. But what are you going to do with that, though?
I am not a medical clinician. I can't advise you on that. But there are other countries that are doing research into things like a pill or an injection for men that would work somewhat similarly, I suppose, to how it would for women. But I don't know enough about the medical side of it to be able to advise you. But there is research going into it. And of course, there will be a way for it to happen. Of course, there will be a way for it to happen. But no one's pushing for it. We'll just let women mess up their bodies for the rest of their lives. And no one's pushing for men to need that. No men are going, I really want to mess up my body. Please give me something to do that. So we just do it.
Right. Yeah. But I think, yeah. I mean, the pill's just bad news anyway, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Is there, are they actually, they're working on stuff for men? That's an interesting.
I'll have to find the research, but as far as I'm aware, it's not in the UK. Slightly more socially advanced countries within Europe, I believe, are working on things like that.
God, that would be interesting, wouldn't it?
That would be very interesting.
Injection or a pill.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that was one thing I was going to say. It's not autoimmune related, is it? It's not like the condition that you're suffering with.
No, it isn't.
No. Autoimmune is I always thought autoimmune, or obviously it's immune system, but autoimmune often falls into the bracket of conditions that people can't categorize.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, they fall in there.
But maybe obviously autoimmune has got to be related to the immune system. So it's probably not autoimmune related, but it must fall into, as you said, you listed off all the things that it just sort of doesn't fit there, doesn't fit there, doesn't fit there. Yes, that's really annoying. That's not because of the pill, is it?
No, it isn't. No. So it's a combination of hormonal and psychiatric factors. So the seizures initially are caused by my CPTSD. That's what makes the seizures happen. But the reason they happen at the times they happen is because of my hormones. So both factors come to play with them, which is why I fall in between the middle, because you don't often get someone who is a specialist in both neurology and endocrinology or the hormones. Do you know what I mean? It's usually one or the other. They don't usually overlap.
No, definitely not. That makes sense. Right. Should we talk about your time in a school?
Yeah, by all means.
For the next sort of 8 minutes or so. So you were a teacher?
Yes, yeah, I was. So I was a special educational needs teacher for 6 or 7 years, I think, in total. Primarily, I worked across a few colleges. So primarily, I worked with 16 to 25-year-olds. But I was a teacher in a school for a little while, a secondary school for students with special educational needs. And I was also a cover teacher for about 1.5 years. So I've worked with children all the way from, I've worked with preschool children all the way up to 25-year-olds. Sort of the whole range. And I've worked with the majority of educational needs you could sort of name. PMLD, although I believe that there's an updated terminology for that now. Those with, again, autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, EAL. I taught learners who speak English as an additional language for a little while as well. So yeah, the whole range.
And what was that like? Why did you get into that?
I got into it. It's a really bizarre story how I got into this. When I was 18, I went to uni like most people do. I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. So I kind of just picked a random subject and went, I'll just do it at uni. I picked marketing, went to uni, hated it. I didn't like marketing. I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't like my halls. None of it was really for me. I had no idea what I wanted to do in my life. And so I dropped out. Which was the scariest thing ever to tell my dad. So I don't know if you ever had a similar experience, but he was like, you what?
Definitely.
Anyway, I didn't know what I was going to do in my life. I dropped out and I got a job around the corner and it was really random. I was a cold caller and I was selling loft insulation over the phone. Really bizarre thing for an 18-year-old to be doing. But I did that and obviously I was miserable. It wasn't what I was passionate about. I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I took a BuzzFeed personality quiz. And the quiz at the end of it tells you what jobs you should be suited to. It's like a career personality type quiz. And it suggested for me teacher, politician, or public speaker. And I thought, okay, public speaking and politics may be challenging to get straight into. I thought, you know what, I'm just going to try teaching. I've got nothing to lose. So I moved back up to where I live now and applied for a job as a teaching assistant. said how much I wanted to try teaching. They gave me one class a week to teach. And this is before I even started my degree. Obviously, at this point, I then ended up doing a degree in education and fell in love with it. I was like, this is it. This is what I want to do. It was amazing. Like, just to see the look on kids' faces when you've remembered something about them, or when you've asked them about something that's been bothering them, or knowing that they can come to you and talk to you about things. Seeing them develop, seeing them learn things, seeing them progress, seeing them become whatever they want to do, and opening those doors up for them and helping them become the best version of themselves. It was just amazing. And yeah, I just loved it, and I knew that's what I wanted to do.
So you went, like the next September, you went straight into a new degree?
I think I had a year gap. I think I had a year between.
Okay.
And then I did what's called an adult degree. So I was working full-time as a teaching assistant, and obviously teaching as well.
Mm.
And then I did a full-time degree alongside it, but I did it in evenings and weekends. So I would go to a college to do my classes, and I would do the work in the evenings and weekends, basically.
Yes.
And then I did my postgrad.
So what was your postgrad in?
It's a PGCE in post-compulsory education. So it's the teaching qualification to teach adults, basically.
And how did that, working with children and young people, did that elucidate and sort of enlighten your opinion and sort of views of yourself? Because I was speaking to someone the other day, and we were talking about how the students sort of reflect back onto you aspects, not just aspects of yourself, but you can like watch them and go, that's an interesting thing, or that was a mistake that you made and you acted like that. And they're like little raw beings that you can view, and they don't have any of the bullshit on them of like adulthood and complexities and things like that. I mean, maybe they do, obviously they do as they get a bit older. But did you find any use? Was it an interesting experience to reflect on yourself whilst working with the students?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I mean, being able to see it from an outsider perspective, some of these conditions that obviously, I'd like to clarify, by the way, that at that point, when I was first started working with kids with special needs, I didn't have any diagnosis. I had all of the symptoms and I had no diagnosis. My CPTSD diagnosis, I only got at 21. So I had none of them. And my autism diagnosis I got last year. So I hadn't had any diagnosis at that point, but I had symptoms. So I suppose it was beneficial in a way to be able to see it and see this is what they're struggling with and this is their diagnosis. So I suppose that gives me an insight. But I suppose for me, I kind of viewed it more the other way around. I kind of more thought if the students are aware that the things they're struggling with, I struggle with too, they're going to feel more comfortable. They're going to feel more supportive. It was more, I want them to be able to learn from me and feel comfortable around me rather than me learning from them. You see what I mean? I suppose the job as a teacher, right, to be able to be a role model and to be supportive for them and that sort of thing. So yeah.
Oh, absolutely. It's the best bit of, I had two teachers on who run a becoming really successful podcast on education, and they were saying that if you ask most teachers, they'll say the best bit of teaching is building a relationship with the students. And that was what I enjoyed. I enjoyed helping them flesh out their personalities and move into parts of them that they weren't comfortable moving in, so that they could activate more of who they were. So I would build like a little conceptual scheme of the students, and I would say, okay, so these are your, it isn't even strengths and weaknesses. It's like, these are environments in which you excel and sort of moves you're comfortable making, and these are moves that you're not comfortable making, and I would encourage them to try and make those moves that they weren't comfortable making. And that was the goal, to try and make them more than they could be. So yeah, teaching is great, and that would have really, I think it would have really helped you as well, even if it was just sort
Probably did, yeah. But without me even realizing it, it probably did.
yeah, unconscious and covert. Right, I'm going to ask the final question, because
Go ahead.
we've been speaking for a long time now, and it is your Thursday evening. It's called the Breaking Point Podcast because I'm interested in people's potentially lowest or even highest points, moments of extreme reflection and necessitation of like a shift, a change, an outlook change. Can you think of a moment that was highly influential in your life and you ending up the way you are now?
Wow, there are a lot. There are a lot I can think of. One of the biggest ones I said is what I said before, making the decision based purely off a BuzzFeed quiz to change my whole life. And that whole decision has been fantastic. It's such a small decision, and it's changed my whole life. I think that was one really for the positive. There's a recent decision, and it may seem small, but I think it's made quite a big impact to me. One thing that you may well have the same experience, or you may have the same experience when you worked with children with special educational needs, is that they, as I said previously, want to seem normal. They want to blend in. They don't want to seem like anything is wrong with them. They don't want people to know they have a disability, all of that sort of thing. And as a high functioning adult as well, when I'm going to events, I'm delivering speeches, I'm talking to customers, I need to seem like I know what I'm doing, and I need to seem like I'm on top of it all the time. And sometimes that comes a detriment to my health. We had an event recently which is called BETS, if you're not familiar with it, quite a large event. It's at the Excel in London, and lots of big educating exhibitors are there. We have a whole stand, so I'll be delivering speeches. We'll have customers come along and I'll demonstrate screens and all sorts of things like that. And after the first day, I was so exhausted because of the sensory overload. I couldn't move out the bed. I literally just slept from about 6 o'clock at night. As soon as I got back, all the way through into the morning, I was exhausted. So the next day, I thought to myself, I've got to do something here. I can't do this again. It was a 3-day event. I thought, I can't do this again. And I wear earplugs most of the time. They're called Loop. You may have heard of them before. They're sort of little ring earplugs. They're quite discreet. People don't usually see them. But the noise cancellation is not enough. And I was getting overwhelmed by the noise there because it was so busy. And I thought, you know what, I've just got to do something here. So I went to the bathroom and I thought to myself, okay, I've got two options. Either I stay and I suffer and potentially have a seizure because they're caused by stress and overwhelm, or I do something that I never thought I would do and wear noise cancelling ear defenders. And these are proper ear defenders that you see, like, not huge ear defenders, right? And I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to see what happens. And this is the first time I'd worn them anywhere.
Wow.
And I've got my manager, I've got the country manager, I've got the manager of Europe, I've got 40 of my colleagues and all of the customers there, and I'm delivering speeches. So I went out there and I just thought, you know what? I'm just going to do it. And I wore them, and the response from everyone was positive. It was really positive, and it was really, really nice. Like, it was so supportive. You know, people were asking me about it, and I sort of explained, you know, I'm sensitive to sound because I'm autistic, so that's why I wear them. People were opening up to me about their own experiences and their own difficulty. Like customers, you know, we're having a discussion about a product, and they're talking to me about their own challenges and things that matter to them. And I had my colleague come to me and say that he believes he may be autistic, and talking to me about how do I get a diagnosis and all of this. And then I had a really lovely moment. So I delivered a speech, and then we took a load of customers out for dinner. Quite a sort of formal dinner. We had 12, 14 customers there. We've got my manager. We've got a few people from head office there as well. Very formal dinner. We're all dressed up all nice in heels and whatever else. And I thought, I can't wear them, but I'm going to have to because I'm overwhelmed. I've got no choice. So I thought, okay, wore them to dinner. And I had a customer sat across the table from me, and he said, So what is it about those headphones? Why do you wear them? And I explained it to him, and he told me some personal stories from his own life, and it was really lovely. And I said, do you know what? The way I see it, I didn't want to wear these, but if you saw a person who was using a wheelchair, you wouldn't say to them, why have you got a wheelchair? Why do you need that? You just accept it, right? But with conditions like this, you see someone wearing ear defenders and you question it. You think, why are you doing that? What's wrong with you? That sort of thing. And I thought, you know what? I want to bring neurodiversity into that point where it's actually included, because it's all, you know, go neurodiversity until someone needs to wear massive ear defenders just to be able to function, or needs to wear darker glasses just to be able to cope with the light. So I thought, you know what? Actually, I want people to see that. And I got a round of applause. It was really, really nice. Everyone was really supportive and really positive, and I'm really glad I made the choice. It was really scary to put myself out there and be like, actually, I'm different, but people were really positive and inclusive, and I think as a result, a lot of people felt more comfortable to be around me and to speak to me about their own challenges, which was lovely.